It's definitely time to learn some new words, so we're going to start off with this word, candid. Definition is impartial and honest in speech. A candid account of something means an honest and true accounting. No lying, no misleading, no deception, being candid and honest. Sybarite, a rare word, but a fancy one. I actually know it, but it's quite obscure. A person devoted to pleasure and luxury. A bit like the word epicure. To be an Epicurean is someone who loves fine wine, fine food. To be sybaritic, or to be a sybarite, I think there's an interesting history there, but it's someone devoted to pleasure and luxury. Very fancy word, but could come up and great to know anyway, regardless. Next word, pristine, meaning fresh and clean, uncorrupted. A pristine landscape is one that hasn't been touched by human beings. It's new, virgin, fresh, clean, uncorrupted. Pristine. Mollify, to calm or make less severe. She tried to mollify the baby to calm it down. Or don't try to mollify me, I'm going to stay angry. To mollify is to calm or make less severe. Philanthropy, charity, a desire or effort to promote goodness. So you might know from another context that anthro means human, like a misanthrope is someone who hates humans. Well, philo means love. So a philanthrope is someone who loves humans. They're generous to humans and give away their money. Philanthropy. If you think my name, Philip, is philo with hippo. It's someone who loves horses, or hippos, I guess you could say. It's more specifically Greek, Latin for horses, someone who loves animals or horses. Philo, love. Philanthropy, loving humans, being generous, charitable. Stolid, unemotional, lacking sensitivity. The stolid expression gave away nothing. It lacked any emotion whatsoever. Stolid. Peccadillo. I told you this list comes up with words you don't see elsewhere. Peccadillo means a minor sin or offence. Oh, you must forgive me my minor peccadillos. Or yes, she had a few peccadillos, but she was a nice person at heart. Minor sins, offence. Maybe loves Haagen-Dazs a bit too much, but it's not super serious. It's a peccadillo. Vestige. A trace, a remnant. The ancient temple left only a few vestiges in the jungle. A few traces, remnants. Fortuitous. Happening by chance, fortunate. Almost always in a good sense, so winning the lottery was very fortuitous. Or crossing the road and avoiding that crash was particularly fortuitous. It's good fortune we're talking about here. Potentate. A monarch or ruler with great power. Think of the word potent, which it's good to know means strong. So a potentate is someone who's full of power or strength, a monarch or a ruler. Syncopation. I'm not 100% sure what that means, so I'm learning here. I think I know. No, I don't. I wouldn't have guessed that. Temporary irregularity in musical rhythm. Syncopation. Wow, so if you want to describe an irregularity in music, so the rhythm's going along and then suddenly becomes irregular, discordant, cacophonous, that's a syncopation. I actually never knew that. So I've learnt a word there too. See, there's very new words in this list. August. I know you're thinking August, the month, but there's also august, meaning dignified, grandiose. I think originating from Augustus Caesar, like an emperor, dignified, grandiose. August, serious, somber, respectable. Paradox, a contradiction or dilemma. She tried to resolve the paradox, but she still couldn't figure it out. Or, his time slip says he was early, but I know he turned up late. It's a paradox. Permeate, to penetrate or spread through, usually with water. So if something is permeable, it means that water or liquids can get through it. Permeable. Pervade, more common word. To be present throughout, to permeate, to be everywhere. Online ads pervade the internet at the moment. They're everywhere. Eclectic, brilliant word, one of my favourites. I use this all the time in real life. Selecting from or made up from a variety of sources. You might describe my music taste as eclectic. I like rock, but also classical. Or the wallpaper in her house was eclectic. Some of it was bright yellow and gaudy, and other parts of the house were very simple and unadorned. Eclectic, selecting from or made up of a variety of sources. Eclectic. Cacophony, I used that word a second ago. Harsh, jarring noise. So what's that word we learned earlier? Syncopation? Well, if there's a syncopation, a gap in the rhythm, that might leave us with a cacophony, a harsh, jarring noise. Usually, if something's cacophonous, it means there's multiple instruments or voices going off at the same time. So a cacophonous office is everyone's talking at the same time. So it's jarring and harsh. Cacophonous. Kudos. Fantastic word. Haven't seen it in any other list. Fame, glory, or honour. Most commonly used in the phrase, I'm going to give you kudos for that. I'm going to give you your rightful glory and honour. I'm not going to take it away from you or attribute it to someone else. So even though the word itself means something really big, right? Like fame, glory, honour. Honestly, the most common way it's used is like, kudos, my friend. Like, good job. Well done. You deserve some glory for that. Kudos. So that's how we use it in day-to-day life. Amalgamate. Wonderful word. To combine together, to mix together. Two companies amalgamated and formed a corporation. They combined, they joined together. Burnish. To polish. To burnish your credentials means to polish your credentials, make them buffed up, more impressive. To shine brighter. Usury. Interesting word to know. The practice of lending money at exorbitant rates. It's a sin in biblical definitions, where basically you lend someone money and you charge interest, usually excessive interest, so that the person goes broke, basically. That's usury. Or you describe the practice of doing that I guess some banks do, is usurious. You know, you get those payday lenders who lend you money for short periods and charge you huge interest rates. A lot of people call that usury. Lending money at exorbitant, huge rates. Another good word to know there, actually. Exorbitant means going out into orbit, so massive. Dogma. Nice and simple. A firmly held opinion, especially a religious belief. If you have those dogmas, that makes you dogmatic. Bifurcate. To divide into two parts. Bi means two, so to bifurcate means to divide into two parts. You might know that the tongue of a snake is bifurcated. It splits in two. And so it's an interesting word to know in many different areas of life. Bifurcate. Next word. Curmudgeon. Again, could come up in the GRE, but also a nice word to know. A cranky person, usually old. Someone who's grumpy, moans a lot, doesn't like how things are. You could say they're curmudgeonly, or they are a curmudgeon. They're just cranky, annoyed all the time, disliking how things are going. Usually an old person. Almost always an old person, a curmudgeon. Although you could jokingly describe your friend as a curmudgeon if they don't like trends among young people. Cranky person. Epicure. Wow, it's the word I literally picked earlier to describe something. I haven't seen this list in advance, but an epicure, do you remember we talked about that? Was someone who had a refined taste in food and wine. Now, here's a little test for you if you were listening. What's the other word that means someone who's really interested in luxury and pleasure? That's a sybarite, making them sybaritic. Well, this person, very similar, interested in food and wine. That's an epicure, making them Epicurean. Similar words, slight twist. So an epicure is more about food and wine, whereas a sybarite is more about luxury in general. But both good words to know. Surly. Rude and bad-tempered. A surly teenager always answering back. Tangential. There's a bit of maths there. A tangent, as you know, just touches on the circle but then goes on a different direction. Well, if something's tangential, it's digressing, it's diverting. It's not staying on the right path. So instead of coming into the circle, it's going off in a different direction, just like a tangent in mathematics. So if you are tangential, or you took the conversation in a tangential direction, it means you're not really staying on topic. You're diverting the conversation to a new place. Ignoble, the opposite of noble. Having low moral character, not noble in character, mean. So a gentleman aspires to be noble, but a criminal, you could say, is ignoble, has low moral standards. Mirth, frivolity, gaiety, laughter. Each of those words are good to know, actually. But yeah, mirth in general is usually amusement. It's like a slightly old-fashioned way to say chuckling and being amused, full of mirth. Imperturbable, wonderful word to pronounce actually. Imperturbable, someone who is not capable of being disturbed. I would say a better way of putting it is someone who doesn't get off-put, stays calm and composed and focused on the task. They can't be perturbed or disturbed or distracted. They are imperturbable. Ameliorate, a bit like mollify that we saw earlier, to make better, to improve. I know mollify means to reduce the damage, but this is similar, right? So to ameliorate is to make it slightly better, to slightly improve the situation. Ameliorate. Laud, to give kudos to someone. We saw that word earlier, kudos. Well, to give kudos to someone is to laud them, to give them the praise, to give them the glory that we talked about, to glorify them. Anachronism. Chron is time. Ana is outside. So something that's anachronistic is outside of its right time. Like in a movie about ancient Egypt, if you see someone wearing a watch, you think, oh, that's a bit of an anachronism. It's something out of place in time. More commonly, you might say, if you go to a shed and you see like a piece of equipment from the 1920s or something, you might say, that's a bit of an anachronism. We don't need that anymore. Or in a modern city, you see like a tiny little farm in the middle with tractors and horses. You might say that's a bit anachronistic. It's not really in its right place, in its right time. Anachronistic. Soporific, lovely word, causing sleep or lethargy. I really hope my videos aren't soporific. I want them to teach you new words, not send you to sleep. Soporific, sending someone to sleep. Although I guess you could say it's kind of a compliment if people find my voice calming enough that they want to go to sleep, but I won't be too offended if you say my videos are soporific. Either way, anomaly. Definition, deviation from what's normal. That result is an anomaly. I can't explain it. It doesn't fit in with the others. It's anomalous. It's an anomaly. It might be an error, or it might just be an unusual result. Distend, to swell, inflate, or bloat. Not particularly common, but you might say the distended limb, like a leg that's swollen. Swelled up, inflated, bloated. Impasse, great word, very common. A blocked path, a dilemma with no solution. Think of like a pass in a mountain is like a path you can go through. So an impasse is a blocked path. More commonly, we might use the word as saying the two companies were at an impasse. They couldn't resolve the situation. They couldn't agree on a fixed price. Or the relationship was at an impasse. She refused to speak to him and he wasn't going to reach out to her. So a dilemma with no solution, an impasse. Antagonize, to annoy or provoke to anger, to cause someone to be annoyed or angry, to antagonize them. Eschew, lovely word, to shun, to avoid as something wrong or distasteful. I eschewed alcohol for most of my life. I shunned it, I avoided it. Exigent, requiring immediate attention. This situation is truly exigent. It's urgent. Catalyst, something that brings about a change in something else. Try to be a catalyst for change and revolution in your area. Try to improve things. Or in chemistry, something that helps speed up a reaction. Divine. A divine entity is like a god or a deity. But to divine something is also a verb. It means to know what's coming in advance. To foretell, to say what's going to happen before it happens. To know through inspiration. I could divine her intentions just from the look on her face. I could tell in advance what she was going to do. So you can use it as a verb, to divine. Idiosyncrasy, fantastic word. Peculiarity of temperament and eccentricity. Or a better way of describing it is something that's unique and quirky about that individual that other people don't have. An idiosyncrasy of mine is that I like to make these vocab videos. Not many other people like doing it. Maybe it makes me a bit eccentric, a bit weird. But it's something that's idiosyncratic about me. I'm sure you have your own idiosyncrasies. Exculpate. To clear from blame, to prove innocent. The lawyer helped exculpate her client. To dupe. To deceive someone, or the person who is deceived, usually easily deceived. So you can use it as a verb, I duped her, or you can say, she was a dupe. She was so easy to deceive, so gullible. Chaos, I think most of you know that word, huge disorder or a confused situation. This company and its environment is just chaotic, so disordered, confused. Euphony, a pleasant, harmonious sound. The opposite, of course, of cacophony, which is a discordant sound full of syncopation, as we saw earlier today. A euphony, not a terribly common word, but nevertheless, is the opposite of a cacophony. A pleasant, harmonious sound where things are working together. Connoisseur, fantastic word. A person with expert knowledge or discriminating tastes. Very often an Epicurean person, someone who's an epicure, who likes food and wine, is going to be a connoisseur. They usually have enough wine that they have some expert knowledge, or they can taste the differences in the grapes. You don't just have to be a connoisseur of wine though, you can be a connoisseur of fancy films and know all the different lines of dialogue on the actors and actresses. Or a connoisseur of French paintings. Most commonly it's food and wine, but you can be a connoisseur of almost anything. Wonderful word. Larceny, also good to know. Theft of property, a fancier word of saying theft, larceny. And finally for today, a euphemism. The use of an inoffensive word or phrase in place of a more distasteful one. Hard to give an example without being a little bit rude here in the video, but let me think. Say that you were trying to describe someone who was obese to your friend, but you didn't want to be offensive in any way. So you might say, that person who's, slightly large, slightly on the bigger side of things. So those words, large or bigger, they're inoffensive words that are used instead of saying something like fat or whatever, something offensive. So you can have sexual euphemisms. Just imagine any time you've used a normal sounding word instead of saying a rude sounding word, that's a euphemism. Either way, I hope you've learned at least one word from this list. I know I have, so I hope you have too. Do let me know in the comments and have a wonderful day.